The America's Got Talent stage was buzzing with anticipation as a young Filipino man walked out under the bright lights. Every eye in the theater was drawn to him instantly. His hair was slicked back in a perfect Elvis style, his suit shimmering under the spotlights, and his posture carried the quiet confidence of someone who had practiced this moment for years. The audience whispered among themselves, trying to process the resemblance. He didn't just look like Elvis, he seemed to carry his spirit. The judges, however, remained composed, with Simon Cowell leaning back in his chair, arms crossed and sharp eyes fixed on the newcomer. Heidi smiled politely, Sophia looked intrigued, and Howie grinned, sensing a mix of curiosity and anticipation in the air. As he stepped closer to the microphone, the young man took a slow breath, his hands tightening slightly on the stand. Terry Crews, standing nearby, asked, "What's your name?" The contestant smiled warmly. "They call me the Filipino Elvis," he replied softly, his voice carrying a hint of nerves but also undeniable passion. The audience chuckled lightly at the bold claim, but the mood was tense, as everyone waited to hear if he could back it up. The music began, a soft, recognizable Elvis tune. His voice emerged, but it was hesitant, almost fragile at first, lacking the power and control expected from a performance like this. Simon's brow furrowed immediately. Within 10 seconds, he hit the red buzzer, silencing the music and shocking the entire theater. "Hold on," Simon said, his voice calm but cutting, "is this really your style? It sounds like you're holding back. And I don't like artists who hold back." The young man's hands shook slightly as he nodded, swallowing hard. "Sir, I grew up singing Elvis for my father before he passed away. I'm nervous, but if you give me one chance, I promise I won't hold back this time." A hush fell over the room. Heidi leaned forward, whispering, "Let him sing." Simon hesitated, studying the contestant for what felt like a long moment. Then, with a subtle nod, he allowed him another chance. The audience erupted in applause, sensing that something special was about to unfold. When the music restarted, everything changed instantly. The Filipino Elvis closed his eyes and lifted his chin. The first notes that came out were no longer tentative, they were strong, controlled, and filled with emotion. The audience gasped as his voice soared through the theater, hitting high notes with precision and vibrato that echoed across the studio. His performance wasn't just about imitation anymore, he was making the song his own, channeling his childhood memories, his love for his father, and his dream of performing on this stage. The judges were visibly stunned. Heidi clapped her hands over her mouth, Sophia's eyes widened in amazement, Howie was grinning from ear to ear, and Simon slowly lowered his arms, his usual critical expression softening into one of astonishment. Halfway through the performance, the camera panned to the audience, capturing tears streaming down faces, hands clutching hearts, and whispers of awe. His voice carried raw emotion, telling a story beyond the lyrics, a story of love, loss, and perseverance. By the time he hit the final note, he dropped to his knees, completely absorbed in the moment. The audience leapt to their feet, giving a thunderous standing ovation. The judges followed one by one, rising to their feet in unanimous admiration. Simon, ever the critic, leaned into the microphone and said words that seemed rare coming from him. "That is why we give second chances." The Filipino Elvis looked up, tears welling in his eyes, and smiled, knowing he had just shared something unforgettable with the world. After his stunning redemption performance, the Filipino Elvis returned backstage, his heart still racing from the overwhelming response of the judges and audience. The energy in the room was electrifying. Crew members, contestants, and even other participants gathered around, congratulating him on the raw emotion he had poured into the song. Terry Crews clapped him on the shoulder, laughing with excitement. "Man, that was unbelievable. You just stole the show." The Filipino Elvis smiled shyly, bowing his head. "Thank you, I just sang from my heart." He felt the weight of the moment, knowing this was more than just a competition, it was a chance to honor his father's memory and the dreams he had carried since childhood. Later, as the live show continued, he was called back to prepare for the judges' deliberation. Simon, ever calculated, asked him a few questions, probing about his inspiration and life story. "So, you grew up singing Elvis to your father?" Simon inquired. The young man nodded, eyes glistening. "Yes, sir. He believed in me when no one else did. Every note I sing is for him." The judges exchanged glances, realizing the depth of the story behind the voice. Heidi's eyes softened, Sophia nodded with admiration, and Howie whispered something to the producer, clearly impressed. Simon, usually reserved and critical, leaned back in his chair, considering what he had just witnessed. When it was time for his second performance, the Filipino Elvis returned to the stage with a newfound confidence. This time, he chose a song that demanded both technical skill and emotional delivery. As the first notes played, he hit every high and low with perfect clarity, weaving emotion into each line. His presence commanded attention. He moved effortlessly across the stage, making eye contact with the audience, connecting with every single person. His voice carried the longing, the joy, and the heartbreak of his journey. The crowd was mesmerized. People held their breath, captivated by the depth of his performance. As he reached the chorus, his voice surged like a wave, filling the auditorium with power and elegance. The judges could no longer contain themselves. Heidi was clapping and nodding, Sophia was on the edge of her seat, Howie's jaw had dropped, and Simon, though maintaining his signature stoic expression, had his arms down and eyes fixed, fully engaged. The Filipino Elvis transitioned effortlessly between falsettos and deep tones, hitting every note with precision while conveying the story behind the lyrics. It was more than singing, it was storytelling. By the time he concluded the performance, the audience erupted in applause, standing and cheering. Judges were visibly moved, some had tears in their eyes. Simon, in a rare moment of genuine praise, said, "I've been doing this for decades, and very few artists ever give me chills like that. You're not just talented, you have heart, soul, and story. That is what makes a performer unforgettable." The Filipino Elvis bowed deeply, overwhelmed by the acknowledgement. Backstage after the performance, fellow contestants gathered around him. Many hugged him, some with tears, others in awe. "You just proved dreams are real," one contestant whispered. The Filipino Elvis smiled, wiping his own tears, feeling the immense weight of his journey from a small neighborhood in the Philippines to the world stage of America's Got Talent. It wasn't just a competition anymore, it was validation, inspiration, and proof that passion and perseverance can move hearts. As the show cut to commercials, cameras captured him looking up at the ceiling, silently thanking his father. The audience could feel it too, the emotion, the authenticity, and the magic of a young man who had faced doubt and emerged not only as a performer but as a storyteller whose voice transcended language, culture, and time. After the emotional highs of his previous performances, the Filipino Elvis returned to the backstage area, his heart still pounding from the standing ovation he had just received. The crew was buzzing around him, congratulating him, but he barely noticed, lost in a swirl of thoughts. This journey had been about more than talent, it had been about proving to himself that he could honor his father, his roots, and his dreams on the world's biggest stage. Terry Crews came over, slapping him gently on the back. "Kid, you're changing the game tonight. Nobody expected that, nobody." The Filipino Elvis smiled, gratitude and nervous excitement mingling in his expression. "I just hope they feel what I feel when I sing," he said quietly, almost to himself. When the judges' deliberation came around, Simon Cowell leaned in, his tone unusually reflective. "Your story, it's compelling. Your performances, extraordinary. But this next round is about consistency. Can you keep that energy? Can you connect again, live, on this stage?" The Filipino Elvis nodded firmly. "Yes, sir. I promise I'll give everything again. Every note, every emotion, this is for my father and everyone who believes in dreams." Heidi smiled warmly, Sophia nodded with encouragement, and Howie whispered, "You've already won hearts. Let's see you win more." On stage, the Filipino Elvis began his next performance with a softer, more intimate introduction. The lights dimmed, spotlight focused, and the music started, delicate and haunting. His voice floated through the auditorium like a whisper, building slowly, drawing the audience in with each note. He didn't rush, he painted each lyric with emotion, allowing the story behind the song to breathe. The crowd was captivated, leaning forward, hanging on every word. The Filipino Elvis's performance wasn't just about singing, it was about telling a story that transcended words, language, and borders. As the song progressed, he shifted seamlessly from quiet intimacy to soaring power, hitting high notes with precision and resonance that sent shivers through the audience. The judges were mesmerized. Heidi's eyes glistened with tears, Sophia leaned forward, completely absorbed, and Howie's expression was one of awe. Simon, notoriously hard to impress, remained silent for a long moment, then slowly raised his hand in applause, nodding slightly. His rare approval spoke volumes. The Filipino Elvis moved across the stage with confidence now, every gesture intentional, connecting not just with the audience but with the emotion of the song itself. The final notes came, lingering in the air, almost as if time had stopped. He held the last note, eyes closed, sweat glistening on his forehead, and then slowly exhaled, letting the silence speak. The audience erupted, a thunderous roar that shook the theater. Judges were on their feet, some wiping tears from their eyes. Simon's words, when they came, were deliberate and full of weight. I have seen thousands of acts, but few have ever moved me like this. You're not just a performer, you're an artist. A storyteller. You've captured the heart of this stage tonight. Backstage afterward, the Filipino Elvis finally allowed himself to smile fully, feeling a wave of relief and joy. Fellow contestants surrounded him, some crying, some cheering, all in awe. He felt the journey's culmination, the proof that passion, perseverance, and authenticity could touch hearts everywhere. For a young man from a small neighborhood in the Philippines, standing on the biggest stage in the world, this was more than a performance. It was a declaration that dreams, when fueled by love and dedication, could transcend any obstacle, and that the voice of the heart could echo louder than anyone had ever imagined.